Wish TV. All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage, exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders, expert analysis on critical legislation. From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
I'm Garrett Bergquist, government reporter for Wish TV and the producer of All Indiana Politics. Welcome to a special edition of the All Indiana Politics Podcast. Governor Mike Braun is noncommittal about whether he'll campaign against Republican state senators who voted against redistricting. Those comments came as part of a wide-ranging interview in his office at the Statehouse earlier this month. Besides the redistricting fight, I asked the governor about his signature property tax law, possible new action on data centers, and his top priorities going into 2026. And with us now is Governor Mike Braun. Governor, thank you for letting us come in today.
My pleasure.
I want to begin with the map vote on December 11th. Were you surprised so many Republican state senators voted against redistricting? That was slightly more than half the caucus.
No, I think that the whole navigation was clear that the Senate leadership wasn't interested in it. I think in general, there'll be the attempt to try to generalize that issue more broadly. I think that's a big mistake on it. That request came from afar, and I think it would require the soul searching of the half of Republicans that dug in to say that they were going to, rebuke the administration. All of our congressional delegation was for it. At the tail end, 80% of Republicans, conservatives were for it. So you basically said we're out of sync. So I would kind of relate that to like when we came in to do what most Hoosiers were interested in, property tax reform. And you got Senate Bill 1 that was intended to set it back to some place where it was going to be more affordable, and they completely gutted it, and then we had to rebuild it in the House and gave historic property tax relief to where all homes in 5 years will be 2/3 exempted. Not to mention 2/3 of taxpayers save immediately out of the gate, and we dampened the trajectory of trying to grow government faster than the economy grows. So I would kind of relate it to it, and the key issues that are going to dominate going forward that we're going to all have a collective interest in doing well together are the ones that I've been attacking from the time I got here. High healthcare costs. I mean, we got some of the highest in the country with some of the poorest outcomes. Taking on hospitals, big insurance companies. And that was a lot of resistance in the Senate there. So I think it ought to be maybe a soul searching for them to see where they're going to get more with it. And when it comes to what our state government is about, K through 12 being half the budget, another 15% on post-secondary, a lot of the things that we got accomplished would be through our own executive orders where it was unrelated to legislation, and raising teacher pay by $5,000. That was our idea. When it comes to all the things we've done in a short period of time to distinguish Indiana as being the state now when it comes to parents' choice. All of the things that make education where they're looking at Indiana, that's a big deal. When it comes to issues like healthcare, even public health, we need to get better at that. And I'm looking for the legislative side to be enterprising there. Utility rates, I mean, that's the hottest topic now because it's on the back of property taxes. And I've already changed 3 of the IURC members to be ratepayer conscious, appointed somebody to the Office of Consumer Counselor that is saying, hey, we need you to be respectful of the ratepayer. Took the first request and said it needs to be a decrease. Those are going to be the issues, kitchen table issues, that we've been running on. That's why we won with a record margin in recent times to win the race. And you got to remember that came through a contentious primary. So look at what underpins a lot of it. you got to fight through stuff like that. Being a successful freshman Senate office, where we got acknowledged again just a few weeks ago that we were there, where it takes a lot of stuff to go right, to where you got a good team. And we found out how to do it there. Obviously, it takes 60 senators to do something transformational. Here you can do it by things like reorganizing state government, sprawling entity that had no real structure to it, turning it into 8 policy silos with entrepreneurial secretaries that have private sector experience and government experience. That's why we're getting through a budget that looked austere, because we're running government more efficiently. Run government more efficiently. That takes care of all Hoosiers on both sides of the aisle. Make sure you focus on affordability, which we're doing that as much as anyone, and a lot of that we can do through how we manage our agencies. And then I'm asking the legislature to be aggressive on trying to reform health care, making sure we get economic development done correctly, with a focus on Main Street and entrepreneurs, as well as the big companies that we need to bring here. All of that is what state government's about, and I'm tickled pink with what we've been able to accomplish. Don't generalize on an issue like redistricting that came from afar. I think it's more for the senators that were out of sync to soul search what that might mean.
You did mention your property tax package, and I am going to get back to that in just a minute. Given the issues with that as well as redistricting, how would you describe your working relationship with the Senate at this point, particularly with Senator Bray?
So I think all of that is the back and forth, the tussle you're going to have when, especially, you're wanting to move faster than the speed at which they may be comfortable with. You can see the House is a different organization in the sense that they were broadly for the redistricting, which I think reflected most Hoosiers, most conservatives, was not out of step with the rest of the country on the Republican side. You get through that. We managed it on property taxes. That was a battle. That was House Ways and Means rebuilding it into a very good product. When you can talk about that kind of relief, it may not have pleased the people that wanted to get rid of property taxes. That doesn't mean you're done with it. And then most of the lingering resistance would be from Republicans that run local governments, and they know we're going to be reasonable and work with them, but you can't grow government faster than the economy or the taxpayers' ability to pay for it. No one disagrees with me on that in the Senate. We just need to take the things that we do agree on. I wish they were more aggressive on reforming health care. It's the biggest tapeworm on our state economy and the national economy, and it costs nearly double what it does across the rest of the world. In Indiana, it does not base its system on wellness and prevention. It buys into expensive remediation. I fixed that in my own business 17 years ago to where it can be done, but you're upsetting the apple cart, upsetting the status quo, and you got to be careful that you're not defending it on a broad array of issues.
We've heard from a lot of local governments that have said they will raise their local income tax rates, as the final version of Senate Enrolled Act 1 allows them to do, in a manner that more or less offsets the loss of property tax revenue. Now, some of your supporters have said that basically means that act is a wash. Your response to that?
I think that dismisses the other part of how you run your governments more efficiently. I can see it in our own state government. We were asked to reduce by 5% because a budget forecast requested it. It was kind of a faulty budget forecast, in my opinion, but we're already exceeding on the cash flow end of it. Governments need to look at doing the same thing. The default can't be just raising taxes without looking at how you run things more efficiently. So I think some local governments, especially school districts, seem to be more confident on living within the current paradigm, need to look at the total array. Look at the fact that we were able to, on education, ask our public universities, other than Purdue, to freeze tuition and other expenses for the next 2 years. Well, every one of them did it, And sometimes you got to have leadership to get that kind of stuff done. You're going to always have people that want more government and more regulation. Well, they're not going to resonate in Indiana. And when you look at the political conformation of Indiana currently, 1/3 of it, or let's see, 2 congressional districts where I'm from, have completely flipped from being Democrats, blue dog Democrats, to the most conservative Republicans. So that gives us these supermajorities. Then what are you going to do with them? If you're going to lay back and do nothing and not address the kitchen table issues in a way, you will lose some of your clout that you currently have in state government. The things I'm talking about, I think, resonate broadly with all Hoosiers, even some in the middle and the other side of the aisle. Healthcare reform, making sure education's affordable, making sure parents are the drivers in their own kids' education with full choice. That's what I'm focusing on.
What will be your top priority for 2026? Is that going to be healthcare costs?
It'll be affordability, and my record has that in it from all the days I ran a business sustainably. And look at the past to predict the future. And the people that don't want an enterprising governor that's going to do things that they disagree policy-wise, they're going to be against you on any issue. And they'll try to generalize on the ones that they think were a setback. Nothing is like this, a trajectory where everything works. Running a business over 37 years, there were more issues you had to deal with that you probably didn't want to if you wanted to grow vis-a-vis competition and what it's like in the real world. And remember, there you got to earn your revenues. Government is a lot simpler than running a business. There's only one of you, you're the monopoly, and what business would have its revenues given to it and they go up 2 to 4% each year? So we need to make sure at the federal level we quit spending more than we take in, and we're pretty good shape here in Indiana. Then it begs the question, what are you going to do with your structurally good cash flow that's going to get better? Or are you just going to sit back on the status quo? Or are you going to attack the issues I've been talking about that distinguishes us from the other 49 states? That's why it's worth putting the effort into it. And don't generalize on something that has nothing to do with state government in terms of what the next 3 to 7 years look like.
What further action can we expect on property taxes this session, if anything?
So you're going to have some that think it needs to be watered down because they think it's been too austere on local governments, somewhat school districts. If they do that, I think you're going to be out of sync, because I think they were out of sync again in the Senate with property tax reform that we had to spend 3 months on getting to where it was. So I would hope that they're looking at more ways to actually help the property taxpayer and buy into running government more leanly, and then looking at other sources of revenue. You got to make sure local governments and school districts are healthy. We all agree on that. They just can't grow faster than the economy can support it, the taxpayer can afford it, and then, yes, if you want to do more, do a referendum. Be honest with your own taxpayers that you're trying to get them to buy into paying more, and I think we've set the stage in being more interactive. If you want to do more locally, make the case for it.
Do you anticipate any further action on data centers, either from the legislature or from your own office?
So let's look at data centers. Number one, the people that want them, the hyperscalers, are going to need to pay for it. We already passed a bill that asked for 80%. I'm not going to be for any that aren't putting more electrons onto the grid. And yes, their economy of scale could theoretically bring rates down. But the one particular thing you can do to make sure it occurs is constitute the commission, the IURC, where they're going to be into making sure that current taxpayers aren't burdened with anything that would require data centers. And we ought to be there. It's probably not going to work around areas with population. You've seen that in Franklin Township. You've seen it just recently up north. And they're probably going to be an ideal fit for any of the rural counties that would immediately benefit from lower property taxes. They don't have the infrastructure to support a lot of education or health care. And I think you're going to have 50, 60 counties that say we'd like them. And then it's got to make sure that you don't have NIMBYism or a few people that say it's a bad idea. That's what's created moratoria in 70 of our counties on solar and or wind. So fight through all that. I think it's clear that geopolitically, we're going to need to stay ahead of China on AI. That means data centers. The demand for electricity was flat as a pancake as recently as 3 years ago. It's changed. Indiana wants to be a part of it. We also want to be on the leading edge of how we generate baseload electricity. And SMRs, small modular reactors, probably going to be the way we do it. We're already positioning ourselves to be that. That's going to take leadership. It's going to take a legislature and a governor willing to stick our necks out collectively to make sure Hoosiers benefit from it and navigate through the difficulty of those issues.
Do you plan to campaign on behalf of primary challengers to the senators who voted against the new maps?
What materializes there is yet to be seen. I think they set themselves up for the risk. When they rebuked what no other state did, had the request in a gentle way from the VP and the president, and decided against it. That does not in any way determine what we do as a state going forward on the issues, again, that are kitchen table in nature. Run our government well, make sure we lead on reforming healthcare, education, making sure utility rates stay stable since they've gone up due to Biden's inflation over the last 3 to 4 years. That's what I'm focusing on.
Did President Trump threaten to withhold any federal funding?
No, that's fake news. To think that there won't be maybe repercussions when it would come to something that you could choose among other states, that remains to be seen. That's the risk that Rod Bray and half of the Senate took. So they'll have to live with that. That doesn't mean we don't do all these other things I'm talking about. And I already know how to wrestle with a Senate that has generally been kind of a wet blanket on a lot of these things I'm talking about. We'll get through it.
Governor Mike Braun, thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.